Hey folks, Steve here with another Empire of the Sun video. The last one took 2 hours. The content is 2 hours, guys. That's a long video. That's a long video for me. That's a movie. We watched a movie. If you watched that last video from beginning to end, you watched a movie. I don't want it to take that long to do each turn for you to watch what I'm doing in these turns. But there's a lot to talk about. I think that speaks to like what this game is, that there is what Mark Herman has been able to do is he's compressing so many nuances into a game that can be played, surely enough, but it is very dense. It's a very dense turn. There's a lot going on, and it's really interesting seeing where and how like I can understand how he arrived at this design, looking at Pacific War and going, well, how do I just zoom out Pacific War a little bit? And the types of things, like the fact that you're working in operations and you're creating operations and planning operations is a huge part of the game, and is actually really interesting as we're going through. So that's all good, guys. So if you're sticking with, and maybe you're just gonna watch like the beginning and ending of each video to see how things are progressing. I know folks watch these things in different ways. If you're not going to stick with the whole video, yeah, that's okay, guys. This is very niche content on YouTube, and I totally understand if this is not for you. Anyway, as we get into what will be turn three, and this equates to May through August. So each year of the Pacific War is broken up into three turns, right? So the last turn that took 2 hours of watching, if you watched it, was January to April 1942. Well, now we're getting to May to August, and so this should be the Allies, first turn where they can start to get, things under control and figure out what they can do. I will say that the Japanese have enjoyed a very strong start, and going back and looking at the math again, they on the odds they should not have been doing this well. I do think the bends, the extreme results on probably the most important die roll of the entire game so far will have been that Batavia invasion where the Allies rolled a 0 and the Japanese rolled an 8. If the Japanese win the game, that is why. The fact that they got that, they managed to really just keep ABDA off the board as an entity, and we managed to knock out the Philippines, Malaya, and Java all on that first playable turn. I think that's an extreme result. So that's going to color, I think, the rest of the campaign. Now, I strongly suspect that the reverse luck is going to hit the Japanese at some point, and we'll see some pretty devastating losses for the Japanese along the way. We'll see. Now, at the end of the last turn, we had I didn't do this on camera. We did reset our card decks because, and I'll just move the camera so you can see, we reshuffled the deck because of Tojo resigns. Tojo did not resign, right? It's not 1944 yet, and that is what that card requires. But it does reshuffle the deck, which means a lot of the good cards that have already been played are back in the Japanese deck. Now, granted, both players' decks are very big, so we won't expect that like we're going to see those cards anytime soon. Maybe we'll see one just in the shuffle that happens to come up. But I do think that last turn was a really good example of how those three really strong historical hand cards for the Japanese really gives them a lot of oomph. And if you take risks, I guess like I did, maybe recklessly took these risks, you can achieve a really fantastic result. But even if you weren't as reckless, like those three cards, just back to back, what you're using to drive your offensive, like those are really great cards to use. Like they will help you get further along, such that you're in a decent position. So right out of the gate, the Erasmus bot is going to be pointing the Japanese player, now to be using the mid-game phase already. So for context, that looks like this. See, it says, use this only if Malaya, DEI, and Philippines have surrendered, or it's turn 4 or later, otherwise use the opening phase chart. Well, amazingly enough, guys, on that turn 2, we did it. So we are technically a couple turns early in terms of progress. The fact that Japan will be leveraging this later bot and strategy is going to be interesting because it's going to be different than the opening. And I think even if we had done even better, and I'm trying to figure out like I guess we would have had to achieved getting all the other resource hexes. That would have put us into an early version. So I'm now looking at the opening phase, like an early version of the mid war, where we're pursuing either at random a Central Pacific strategy, CBI strategy, and so on. But that's really, this is going to be where we're at with the mid game, where we're going to be looking at, finishing out our resources. This is going to be the way this works out for Japan. We don't have 13 resources, we have just 11, which means we need to get up Vogelkop, we need to get Rangoon, and this resource strategy result, the advisor is telling us, hey, we really need to grab the rest of those resources. Okay. And once we do that, then we're going to starting to look at ways to knock down U.S. political will. And you can see here if the way the Erasmus strategy is defining this, if the U.S. political will is already less than 4, meaning it's on its last legs, then we pursue a Central Pacific strategy, which might include going into the Attu Kisa. That's going to affect the invasion of Alaska political will, Wake Island to continue to put pressure on the U.S. or Midway or attacking the U.S. fleet. That's basically just going to force the U.S. to take more political will losses that could lead to an automatic victory. If they still got high U.S. Political will, then this starts to drive us down towards these other options where has Burma surrendered? No, well, then we want to focus on Burma because that's going to get us some additional U.S. political will drops. That's going to help the China theater and everything else we're going to see. So this Erasmus bot is much more simple in terms of broad strategy, and you should know that like deeper within this, there are more direct Erasmus instructions for playing the other side as a bot, where it's even driving like what units you're picking for your operation. We're not doing that. I'm doing that. So the only part of Erasmus that I've been using and will be using is the high level axis of determination, like strategy level guidance, just to keep us on something resembling sensical strategy. But everything else I'm running myself. And then, of course, we've got the solo system throwing us curveballs along the way, which is fun. So if you didn't watch the last video or you're just checking in, yeah, we are using the solo system. That has introduced some interesting quibbles to our intended card play, which is interesting, and both sides have kind of felt the weirdness of that. So there you go, guys. That's where things stand. Now, this is the first full turn that we're actually going to play, so we're going to have some additional things that we got to do. When we look at the sequence of play, we're going to have reinforcements and strategic warfare. Let's see if we can get the focus right. There we go. Reinforcements, replacements, strategic warfare, and then dealing the strategy cards, which, with the solo system, that we're technically already set up for that, but we will reset their cards' remaining counters. The Allies may still have some restrictions, but the Japanese are going to still have 7 from their pre-war storage, but we will be flush with resources over the course of the turn, and then we'll get into the offensives. Wash, rinse, repeat here, guys. So, okay. Well, we're going to go take a look at the reinforcement segment. Again, this is stuff, these... Well, we'll talk about it. I'm going to go do it. I'm going to do the work, and then we'll talk very briefly about how that is going for the both sides, as it were, and go from there, talk about replacements, strategic warfare, and so on and so on and so on. But we are now getting into the meat of the game. We are off the rails of the historical hands, and now it's just what we get and what we play. The game opens up from here, guys, and it'll be very interesting to see just where we get to. Okay, I've done the reinforcement phase, but not the replacement. I guess it's segment. We've done the reinforcement segment, but not the replacement segment. I want to talk through this just really quick. All the units that were here in the delay box have come out and have been deployed. All the turn 3 reinforcements, because the War in Europe marker is in its starting location still. You have to put all the current turn reinforcements into the delay box. We will get these next turn, technically.
Though we did get some HQs. So we have MacArthur's Southwest Pacific HQ returning. We also have the Anzac HQ. We also have uh, the South Pacific uh, HQ, which, just to show you how I've set that up, I put Southwest Pacific here. That's close to the historical place that MacArthur went. I think this is the usual recommended location. This is good because it can trace supply south off the map, so we can certainly place it here. This does not solve by itself the Australian attrition problem, but what it does do is gives us a very safe place to project, you see, 20 hexes out. And if you count out 20 hexes, that puts you out here, which means that, MacArthur can generally be driving the war effort through this sort of line of advance from a relatively safe location because the American HQ ranges are huge, right? The one in Hawaii is 25, which gets us to like here, right? This whole part of the map. And now MacArthur down here with the Southwest Pacific, where it used to be in the Philippines, is projecting out basically all the way up into here, which, eventually we'll need to reposition our HQs depending on how things go, but this will work just fine for now. I put the U.S. Army Corps, I reinforced Gilly Gilly. This is to ensure that we never lose Port Moresby and we've got sufficient strength nearby to threaten to retake anything lost in New Guinea. I also have put the majority of the naval unit reinforcements, this MAW unit, Marines, and these naval ships here at Guadalcanal. So one of the failures of the Japanese, like we took Rabaul, but we really didn't do anything else, and we didn't take Guadalcanal. That would have given us control of the rest of these ports. Um, so the Allies kind of control everything technically around Rabaul, as far as I understand it, which maybe this was my mistake for getting tunnel visioned over here. I should have made more gains. I put them safely here. If I had put them into Bougainville, and I swear, guys, I just read books, man. I don't know how to pronounce that. Uh, any air ZOI coming out of Rabaul is going to cover that hex, so I would prefer to operate from Guadalcanal and leap into Rabaul if I'm going to do that, and we're certainly more capable of doing that from here. I do need to think about maybe moving some of my aircraft carriers up, but I have other thoughts maybe on how I'm going to use those guys. Not sure. The Anzac HQ, we just put right into Port Moresby. I think that's the best place for it. This will keep all the Australians nice and happy. And I've put that South Pacific HQ in Bayak because I don't know where else to put them that's going to be valuable. So this just gives us some secondary HQ tracing in case for some reason we do lose Port Moresby and we lose ZOI tracing or something. Like, we've got a backup HQ here. I'm not sure what else to do with that. It gives us a little bit more, I guess, options that like we could. I don't know. I don't know. I'm looking at like the card-driven solitaire system to give us a pointer, and that's the best pointer I can derive is to stick it somewhere in New Guinea. Nowhere really looks great that doesn't already have redundancy with the Southwest Pacific. So here is just as good. I've also put reinforcements in the form of the 10th Air Force uh, sort of bomber unit, and I stuck it in Bayek as well, which is legal given that I could, at the time of placement, count 25 hexes out to that HQ. Now the Japanese have brought in their reinforcements and they're applying some ZOIs, but this was an in-supply hex at the time we placed this air unit, which means now Vogelkop is going to be much more difficult to get into because we should be able to react with air cover. It's within our ZOI, so we just made it a lot harder for the Japanese to get in there. Again, we've got our sort of counter thrust that could be aligned against Rabaul. That gives us a leaping off point to be targeting Truk, which was looking, a little underhanded, undermanned until we put some more reinforcements in. I've also reinforced Wake Island with some air, which should be able to also contest Kwajalein's troops. I've also put in some reinforcements into Midway just so we make sure we don't lose Midway to a sneaky, invasion that could happen at some point. So we're investing in some strength, and we're picking our picking our battles where we can pick them. Um, and then we also have some Commonwealth reinforcements, which basically just reinforcing Calcutta. We have more air units that are going to protect Burma as we progress. And then I stuck the Indomitable Carrier here in Colombo. That is just to dissuade, again, any sneaky Japanese invasions, to try to cut that and then try to cut supply this way. We've got a decent strength carrier. It's going to protect that location with some ZOI protection, strengthening what we have. For the Japanese, really, they didn't get a lot of reinforcements, and it really just amounted to sticking the Junio carrier here in Rabaul so that there's more air defense of this location. We also put a army unit single step in here with the Marine so that we've got some stability in defense. We'll look at where we're going to put replacements because I would like to take some steps from China and get these guys built up. Truck itself got an air unit, so now we've got a little bit more help here. We do need to find something better to do with that APD unit. I really kind of have this in like a weird state over here. So I did like really good over here. The Japanese is set up funky over here, where we still have some Marine units in Guam that are hanging out, not projecting a ZOI. That's kind of a problem. And we need to, I think, pretty quickly try to rebase something. We can actually get this guy on a 3-ops, can go here to here to here reasonably enough and get into Guam and protecting Saipan and everything. But have to figure that out, I guess. That's going to cost us a card. And then otherwise, we also added some Army air units to what will be the Burma push. So both sides, just putting units where I think it makes the most sense. Unfortunately, I've left myself exposed as Japan, and like I might need to use a card play, which feels really a shame. Have to use a card play just to get some units moving. So like I could activate South HQ here, activate this area unit, and send it over. But that would be a unit activation when, each unit activated really, really matters. So I have to think about my own defensive perimeter. I need to think about where I'm going next, where I want to focus. Obviously, getting into here was going to be really important. In fact, Erasmus is going to say, take this, take Burma. I can focus on one of them. I'm probably better situated maybe to push on Rangoon immediately, where this just got a little bit tougher to get into, but I probably still could. So that's it for reinforcements. We've obviously got replacements, so I'm going to go do that next. But just to say, in the solitaire system where you're just making the best choice that you can, your HQs, obviously you want to put in a place that's going to extend your command range and ideally avoid ZOIs boxing you in. And then the units, assuming you can get units into supplied ports and everything like that, like, obviously you're thinking about defending areas that maybe looked under defended and then being a good leaping off point like Guadalcanal to a counteroffensive of some sort to keep your opponent on their toes. So let me go do replacements and we'll show that, and then we'll get into strategic warfare.
Okay, I've now also gone and done the replacements phase. Now this is where the cold, harsh reality of the Allied advantage starts to show itself, not in real terms yet, which I'll explain, but just looking ahead at the imbalance. But so for the Allies, if we look at the replacements chart, 2 ground, 5 air, 1 China step. Well, the reality is we applied the China step, so we flipped one of these reduced units to full near Burma. It seemed like the right thing to do. All of the eliminated Allied units on the map, or that were on the map and are now, off map, they all have the non-replaceable dot. They're all pre-war stuff. So those replacement points can't be used for them. And effectively, neither can the
ground replacements, and I don't think there's a possibility I could use them for units in the delay box. I'll have to double check that. If they can be, we'll mention that later, and I'll put those replacement points on those units and beef up the Army, U.S. Army units. But effectively, right, like the Allies, while they get a boatload of replacements, really didn't have an opportunity to use them. A good thing or a bad thing, or like a good thing that we don't actually have any replaceable units with a lot of damage on them. So that's fine, just lost opportunities. Now for the Japanese, there's really not much for them to do either, really. I actually didn't do the Japanese naval replacement yet because I don't know that I was trying to double check. I don't think I actually have any reduced Japanese naval units on map at this point. And so oh no, we do. We have the Yamato, which we might as well grab and fix up. Big super battleship. And that's it. Now I did pull off 2 steps from the China track, and I beefed up units in Burma with the expectation that things are going to get hot and heavy in Burma, and both sides are kind of gearing up in that regard. That's just sort of the expectation. I do need, as I get the play going, I do need to rearrange a lot of the Japanese units that are on the board. They're not really in optimal positions. And truly, the New Guinea, Solomon Island area is going to start to heat up as well. So those are going to be the main areas of action, I think, this turn. That's just going to be part of the reality. So there you go. And now we would be getting into the strategic warfare segment, so right now, there's 2 different kinds, basically. The Allies can be doing submarines. They can also be doing bombers. The bombers are not really in place to do that, so it's really just a submarine die roll check. So this is what that looks like here, guys. Submarine warfare 1d10 minus the game turn. So we just roll this and then apply all of our modifiers as it is. Okay, so we rolled a 6 minus the current game turn, which is turn 3, is a 3, and then we also have a +1 from this being 1942 due to the defective torpedoes, where they had not yet added, I think it was pieces of wood to help the buoyancy level with that, if I'm remembering right. So there is no success here on submarine warfare. So that's a really easy check to handle here. And so if I am confident now, we're going to be dealing with the deal strategy cards. So as it stands, the Japanese player is going to have 7 card plays because they still have their pre-war stockpile that will last through turn 4. If we were to not have that, we would be drawing 6 cards because our resources are at, I believe, 11, and you round up. It's half your resources rounded up. So the ideal situation is we get these last resource hexes, last 2, that we'd be at 13. I think that's the maximum that you can have. And then, we would be drawing 7 cards, obviously from there on out. But the submarine warfare over time will attrit cards away from us. So while we start with 7 cards and we aim to keep 7 cards as long as possible in the game, eventually the Allies will, push us into a point where we have fewer cards like they were at the beginning of the game. So that's sort of the switchover that happens now. By scenario rule, the Allies are going to have, I believe it's 6 cards and 1 pass. So they're still slightly disadvantaged, but we're going to reach, card hand parity here. And what that is really important for is every action will have a reaction, rather than the cases where we've had the Japanese able to kind of, do double moves unopposed back to back because of the passes. So that's going to start to, that advantage is going to start to leave the Japanese player. And already, I mean, just looking at the map, right, we are largely in only a couple of other places. We're obviously really close to the Japanese historical apogee anyway. Like, there's not much more for us. We could take some stuff in New Guinea, Guadalcanal. We kind of slept on. We didn't get in there like we could have. Um, Maybe I should have. But, there's not, there's only so many more territories that the Japanese would be pushing into or taking before we hit like the maximum extent that we ever got as historically that the Japanese got. And then from here on out, right, the entire game is going to be the Allies trying to push the Japanese back, and ultimately, try to get an atomic bomb type victory here where we have bombers in place in these islands close to Japan. That's kind of the objective. So yeah, there you go, guys. That is all the reinforcement phase stuff, the segments before the offensive phase. Um, Pretty straightforward stuff. And then we're going to get back into the offensive phase. Right now, what I'm going to try to do to save on time is excuse me, guys. Oh my goodness, I'm a little congested today. Uh, I'm going to just like I will look at the Erasmus bot. I will rolled for my card, selected my card, played the card, and then we'll just talk about the aftermath of all of that rather than the additional clips of talking about what we might do and then do it and then talk about it. Just to try to shorten the runtime on these videos. It is going to mean maybe less fidelity than the last video, but I know that, folks will understand, right? Like, this game is complex, it's really dense. There's a lot to it as you play it. I could spend the time to talk about every move. It would take forever to do that. So I'm going to try to increase the tempo. This may mean that this video you're watching right now, you'll see the timestamp. It could be an hour and a half. Maybe it's only an hour. I'm going to guess it's still more than that because I just yammer on. But we will talk as much as we can about how the game situation is evolving as we play through here this May-August 1942 turn, effectively turn 3 of the full campaign. So yeah, there you go, guys. I'm gonna get rolling here. Probably gonna be an opening Japanese offensive either in Burma or New Guinea. We'll see. Okay, here's the first Japanese card play. I rolled a DE on the solo card pick, so we went with Operation RE or Ray. I'm not sure how it's intended to be pronounced. Um, Otherwise, the E card was an air offensive only, and Erasmus is indicating we need to get more resources. So what I did do, I did a move that would enable us to get air coverage over Saipan and Guam, and then here we did launch an invasion from Davao into Vogelkop. Now, we did have a special reaction. We did try to stop that, but I was put into a real difficult choice because the movement capability is just a 10 naval movement. Not everything could get there the way I wanted. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah. Not to say I couldn't have tried to get more in there, but if I had moved the U.S. Army, I'd be giving up protection of Gilly Gilly, and the way that things are mapping out, it's like, you can try to stop in one place, but you leave yourself open in another place, and I'm a little cautious. This is a very big, strong unit, but it can only be in one hex at a time, so, and it really is intended to protect Port Moresby and Australia in general from encroachment, so I guess, losing Vogelkop is not great, but we did try. We moved air units and naval units in to try to stop the advance. Unfortunately, the Allies rolled a 0 and the Japanese rolled a 6. So no real damage to the Japanese whatsoever, and we got kicked out. I would have maybe tried to move this Australian unit in, but I don't know. I'm struggling to figure out like what would that have looked like. We would have shipped a unit in. Maybe that would have been the better thing to do, but then we would leave Darwin open. So again, it's like, real Sophie's choice here. Like we move anything, like, okay, let's just let them have that resource hex, but now they need to try to keep it. And all the while they're keeping units, holding Vogelkop, we have other ways that we can advance in the Central Pacific. So as the allies, I'm kind of looking at this going like, I'll accept this, that's fine. You do what you got to do there, Japanese player. You are going to be vulnerable elsewhere potentially as we organize our own offensive capability. So that's what we're doing. Card one. I almost did some stuff in Burma, but this just seemed more valuable. Like I can pick up that resource hex. Let's go ahead and do that, and that's it for the first Japanese card play. So that is done there. We're gonna head back over to the Allies. We'll roll the die. We'll make a choice, and we'll move. Right now, Erasmus is going to generally tell us to go on air raid missions or air naval raid missions to try to attrit the Japanese air down. That's a good idea, certainly. We just need to find the right places to do that where it's going to be the most effective. I think trying to beat up on Kwajalein is certainly one option, but we need to watch out for Japanese reaction capability. We could do some smaller OC card offensives that would reduce the capability of those units in Japan from getting down into Kwajalein. So that's probably the right thing to do. So really measured offensives, or we go on the offensive in Burma and try to throw the Japanese back. I am entertained by that idea because I don't feel like the Japanese are set up in Burma well enough. So we'll go play that, see what happens. Okay, going over to the allies, I decided to use the one allied pass, and I started looking at the Erasmus mid-game chart. It doesn't quite qualify given the circumstances because we're just on turn three, but I can't figure out, like, I think we just need to progress. We need to treat this like the mid-game due to the Japanese advances and just try to get a better handle on what's going on, though we're in desperate need of more reinforcements as the allies. We'll play it by ear. I'm making some. I feel like the Steve effect is also going to influence the game where I'm not making the best choices. Now, I went right back to the Japanese. I rolled an A-B result for the solitaire, and basically, I had to use the War in Europe card, not for the event, which is really what I would have wanted, because it's a great time to play these cards. I didn't want to use this card yet, because this is my, like, force a decisive carrier battle if I can make it happen. So we had to play the War in Europe card for an op, and we didn't declare a battle hex. We really have just rearranged units to prepare for the next Burma roll, basically. Um, so we're having to deal with that. I don't feel very good about it, but that's kind of the rub. We're setting up. We're preparing for what will be a lot of piling on units to try to make something happen because we don't have the bridge over River Kwai. It takes a lot to move these units in there. And the problem's going to be that we still have to deal with the Chindits reaction. So Burma's just going to start to become a tough nut, but Erasmus is going to continue to kind of push us towards Rangoon. So like we need to get in there. We should get in there. Um, Otherwise, this whole part of the game over here becomes moot point for Japan and becomes a weakness. So we have to keep pushing on that. Now it will go back once more to the Allied card play where they actually are going to need to decide to do something. I am going to try to reference the mid-game phase, and so that you guys can see the difference here. Like, do we have a pass available? Well, now the answer is no. Do the allies need to make progress of work? Technically, no. We don't have to do that until starting next turn. So if we capture a bunch of ports right now, even if we could, that's going to be less ports that we can count for progress of war. So we don't want to like overdo it early. We're still like turtling and preparing right now. So if we just said no to that, right, then we would go down to, do the allies have 3 or more cards? The answer is yes. Otherwise, this just puts us into a random strategy of which we will figure out along the way based on what the solitaire card system die roll is. What's interesting is, again, like the roll here kept me from playing maybe a card I would prefer to play. I had to play this, even though, again, I would have wanted that event for something. So that constraint on myself combined with my my poor play, I'm sure is going to affect the game, will lead to some interesting results. This would obviously be very different from an opposed game where you're just playing standard and like you really are able to make the best decisions that you can. But it is, this makes for an entertaining situation because hey, the historical actors made mistakes, so we're gonna make some mistakes too. So all right, allied card play. Okay, allied card play. I rolled an ABC. I chose to use the Operation Galvanic card to do an ops, right? Up to this point, we've been playing a lot of event cards, which are really powerful. Don't get me wrong. They tend to be really great when you want something big to happen, but the intelligence values tend to be pretty high. It makes it easy for the reaction player to respond to them and basically cause a big fight that will be attritional to some degree. Uh, Here, the Allies have done some sneaky stuff. And again, I'm kind of like getting off the rails of Erasmus a little bit, trying to take my training wheels off. We'll see how smart that was. But we decided to go on a minor counteroffensive in Burma against the Japanese. And we fortunately, despite operating in the ZOI of a Japanese air unit, the Japanese failed their intelligence roll, which meant that this was just a straight up surprise attack where we concentrated Allied air on this ground unit. It did not get any support, could not get any support. And we reduced it in the air naval combat, but in the ground combat, which included a Chinese unit and an Australian unit, or not Australian, Indian unit, I should say. And I believe this stacking is correct. I might need to double check that. If it is, it just means that, the Chinese might need to have retreated to here. Both sides rolled a 1 in ground combat. So kind of a push. It would have been really great to have done, if we had rolled well enough, like a 9 or even a 1.5 or even a 1, I guess, would have been enough to eliminate that step, firmly pushing the Japanese back into Siam and essentially like depleting the Japanese ground unit pool, which again, there's only so much, right? That's really the problem with the Japanese. As soon as you start cracking them, like they're not going to come back. Every step lost is one that's not going to make it back on the board, essentially. So we use that, a 3 ops card, but as an ops card, not an event, a small surprise attack, right? So that's the other part of the strategy. Like you don't have to go big on these big events because you can do a smaller knit operation that's just as good. Now, I'm kind of overselling this a little bit because Operation Galvanic was a surprise attack card anyway, and we could have activated a lot more units, I guess. So I'm kind of fibbing a little bit, guys, on like sneaky. Well, it was a sneaky card anyway, and maybe a waste of a surprise attack card. But I only had so many options, and the other options were really not ones that I wanted to use. I probably could have used Operation Ash a bit better for this purpose, but I don't know. I'm figuring out, guys. So you're not seeing optimal play. I'm probably going to make some dumb mistakes. So we'll go back to the Japanese. Obviously, I mean, we're still pointing towards Burma as like the region of importance. We still have as the allies the Chindit card, so there's going to be a lot of friction in that space. The Japanese are going to need to decide to do something. And I might break away from Erasmus because I don't want to get tunnel visioned on Rangoon. Like, there's still a lot of other stuff I could be doing that might give me better long-term survivability here. And I do probably want to move my main fleet out of Japan down to Truk just so we have better reaction capability in the Central Pacific in general. A couple of things we need to work out there. So I'm going to go do more Japanese card play. Okay, guys, I'm really in it now. Training wheels are coming off. Um, Erasmus was behind my shoulder here, telling me, "God, go into Burma, go into Rangoon. It looks really tough, but you should do it." And I promptly pushed Erasmus off the balcony, for the moment at least, because I rolled my solitaire die. I got a DE result. I flipped my D card as Japan and got this Rear Admiral Matami Ugaki. Seizure of Hawaiian Islands. What could I do with that? NEHQ, logistics value 6. So 6, what, plus if I chose the South Seas HQ, 8 units. Maximum 1 ground may be activated. And we have naval units for both sides may move up to 21 hexes. Now, that's just naval units, so this makes proximity of ground units really important. But when I looked at the map, I said, by golly, this is like the best time to play this card right now. I need to do it right now, and make this work. I don't know if I don't know that this Rear Admiral actually was advocating for this sort of thing. Maybe he was, I don't know, but he came to the table and said, "Hey, what if we did this?" Crazy guy, and we were doing it. So, what did this entail? Well, a couple of things. You're going to grab one hex. What hex are you going to grab? I elected to go for Midway because I felt like Midway was covered with a lot of air power, and probably would have responded, reactioned with the American carriers to protect it, right? Are we going to face a Midway, a really dangerous Midway too early? But instead, this card gives us so many great options. So first of all, I wanted to make sure that this forward deployment of some American naval ships to threaten Rabaul and help protect this whole region, they could have reacted into Midway, right? So when you're looking at an operation, you're thinking about not just where your units are going to go, but where your enemy's units could go in reaction, right? So these guys could have been activated, at least the naval units could have been activated to go up, to go up and defend Midway. Didn't want that. I made a sacrifice play. I sent this air unit, which is now down to one step, extended range over and pinned, smothered the Guadalcanal hex as an air raid, right? Tied up those units with an air raid, did that, right? Easy activation from South Seas HQ. Straightforward, right? Fine. Kept those out of it. Moving 21 hexes from Tokyo gets you to Oahu. So I still had my big carrier fleet, right? The main Japanese carrier fleet. I hadn't moved out of Tokyo after returning them after Pearl Harbor. They've done nothing for months. Well, now we know why. They just went on this massive excursion, a Pearl Harbor Part 2, and attacked. And so one, that's pinning the forces in Oahu, just period, right? And of course, the result was a resounding success because the Allies, sure as crap, rolled a 2 on the die, meaning they did a quarter result, which was not enough to hurt any of the Japanese units that we sent. Talk about making out like a bandit. We rolled enough. I think we rolled like a 6. Yeah, it must have been a 6 because we had a 1 times result, which is left. Honolulu's not defenseless by any means, but the carrier units are reduced. The air unit is reduced. So we've definitely decreased the ability for the U.S. to counterattack. And then we sent the remaining forces. We had sent this army unit that had 2 steps, mind you. So we were paying a lot of shipping costs to get this unit over here, along with its own escort involved. Hiei was involved with that. And we attacked here. And the only things defending Midway were air units, obviously, because of it being just an air base, and a American Marine unit that we had stationed there for just this sort of occasion, right, to defend. And when we look at, you would need the ground unit that could react has to be 15 units away. Well, we were already, attacking Oahu. There's really no way for this guy to get up there. It's just too far. Excuse me. But this ground unit started here. And, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 hexes to Midway. We can go for it. And we did, right? So the naval units traveled within 21 hexes. The ground unit traveled within 15. And in the ensuing combat, we took a step loss, having a lot to do with a high die roll on the American side, and that we were halved on defense as an amphibious assaulting unit. But we also rolled fairly well, and it was overkill, but we took out the American unit, Special Forces unit. So now we, in post-combat movement, right, not much there. This guy just went home, and then we've kind of rearranged the Japanese forces here, where now we have a solid presence in Kwajalein, such that if we needed to react into Midway, we could do that. And we could do that using our 2-ops card if we had to as a reaction. We could go up to defend Midway if the U.S., the Allies, try to get back into Midway. Right now, right, if the American carriers, the damaged ones, were to try to get after Midway, right, like we could react, we could take them out, and the U.S. would be in deep trouble for that. So while I can't move anything into Midway right now for like air cover, it's protected by my reaction card and that I have my carrier fleet operating out of Kwajalein, excuse me, within 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. It's a 2-ops naval move away, that we would be able to get in there, and it is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, meaning a 2-ops card away for the Allies to even try to get over there. So this feels like a really excellent time to have played this card. I'm glad I did. I could be hanging my butt in the air somewhere else, or maybe this is too good to be true. Did I do something wrong? I think I did it right. Like, Tokyo was 12 hexes from this HQ, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Like, I counted. I think I got it figured out. This is a coup of a card play. Like, this is the perfect time to have had this card come up. I was well positioned for it. And now, again, we have this really great capability. We could be picking on Wake Island. We could be reinforcing, we could do a strategic movement and get, say, like this, Army air unit over Midway. And now, like, this will just continue to be a thorn in the Allied side for some time. The other thing that's worth mentioning here is that if we can hold Midway like this through the rest of this turn and next turn, that will decrease the U.S. political will another step. So that's just, again, progress on the way to victory. We can actually, now is a pretty nice time to be thinking about, do we try to get into an Alaska island location? Can we make that work? Is that going to be worthwhile to do? It works the same way, basically. Like, we get a step up there. We're going to be in fine shape if we can hold it, and then again, decrease U.S. morale. So, like, this is just really good stuff. Really good stuff for the Japanese. I think this is like a critical card play at this point. And good luck, too, right? Like, this fight here could have gone very differently. Even a 1-1 result would have been attritional, but we might have been happy with taking Midway and just using that to be a problem over time for the Allies. Like, the tough thing is it's not a naval base, right? Midway's not a naval base. We can't, we're not going to be like smashing in a Pearl Harbor constantly, but having this capability, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 3-ops card gets us, part of the way. We could keep hammering on Honolulu from here, like, Burma be damned. Why don't we just, delete the U.S. ability to respond across the whole map? And even if the Allies were beating us in Burma, like, we're winning on the table. So anyway, enough on this, guys. We're going to see what the Allies can do in response. Right now, it feels like a challenge. They've got they can't do much while they're waiting for their reinforcements. The reinforcements will matter, but the Japanese have this huge incentive right now to just pile on the pain right now onto the American setup here. And again, operating out of Kwajalein now that we've made our attack and our shift, we can hit them again, right? Why not? Why not hit them again? Do we try to invade? That's probably not going to work on this very strong American Army Corps, obviously. So I don't think that's going to work. But like, we could continue to beat up on that base and force American reinforcements to come in down here, which would still be a danger, but we would have like neutralized Pearl Harbor. That would be huge. So, okay, I'm going to go do that. Allied move. We'll see what happens. Okay, guys. The Allied turn went. We managed to get a War in Europe card, and we played it So now the Allies are going to get their reinforcements right away. There's no more delay, which is good. And we did that because there wasn't really a lot of options. Like, what could we have tried to do? Because again, we had the reaction capability. We couldn't go after Midway right away. We just didn't have the strength. So it's like, okay, we're going to play the long game. Let's make sure we get all of our reinforcements because time will be on our side. It doesn't matter, that we're taking some punches. Like, this is the time that we get punched. Let's invest. Let's get that War in Europe card up. So long as we keep that high, we'll get all of our reinforcements and we'll send them right into the fray. And, we'll be in great shape. So, like, let's just do that, right? Let's just do that and we'll overwhelm the Japanese eventually. So we played that for better or for worse. So there's the War in Europe card. And we went back to the Japanese and we got an ABC result. We flipped the card and this card came up, Operation Ego. It's a good reaction card, right? Like, it's a solid action card. And so my options were use one of these three reaction cards. Well, I decided to go with this as a regular ops, a 3 ops card. And I launched an attack. Basically, what I did was I repositioned the Yamato to Rabaul, and then I sent my, Hiei, Akagi, and Shikaku at Pearl Harbor again. Hit them again, right? That's the thought. Hit them again. Do what we can. And in the ensuing fight, both sides rolled a 1x result, and they hit the Shikaku, which is going to reduce Shikaku's capability. Given it's got the dot, I don't know that it can even take naval replacements, right? Like, I'm not sure about that. I don't think it can, unless this only applies if they're eliminated. Point is, they took a step. But the one result on the Allies eliminated the rest of the air naval in Honolulu, and now makes it such that there are no U.S. carriers on the map. If I don't consider the delay box the map, I'll have to look at that. But not good, right? So now Honolulu's in direct threat. And here are the things that the Japanese can consider doing from here. We could, later, if we played another 3 card, we could go drop in there, right? There's no ZOI, so we could play a small ops card, sneak a unit into Hawaii, the big island, and then try to get, because we're not gonna necessarily bash our way into that Army Corps, but then figure out a way. And I've already done this. I moved one of our air units in Japan for strategic redeployment next turn as a reinforcement. If we were able to get into here, or if we can't get into here, we're going to put that air unit in Midway. If we get into Hawaii, we're going to put the air unit there. And then imagine for a second, sorry, I'm getting like shaky cam here. Like, what happens with that, right? Well, what it means is we're putting this HQ out of supply, which means he's going to start to attrit, and basically that's done up until, then we're fighting down here in the south as the way for the Allies to come back in. So I would love for that to happen as the Japanese. I don't know that I'm going to be able to achieve it. But this is so far remote, and like the fact that we just destroyed the carrier fleet of the United States, like, this is big game stuff here, guys. Like, this is what could happen is I'm going to end up having to call this playthrough early at the end of turn like 4 or something. And then we'll just restart the 1943 scenario. Like, that's the beauty of the game, is we could just re-rack the game and continue on. Like, that'd be fine. So that's the next couple of card plays. So as we look if we go look at what's left, and I think I didn't, yeah, I got to shift this down one now. The Allies have 4 cards to play, and then the Japanese will have 3 cards to play. There's still a future offensive, but there's not much that the Allies can do now. Like, it's really, are we going to try to poke and prod at Rabaul? Well, we would give up, some protection of Guadalcanal to do that. We need to decide what to do with this ground unit, maybe something more than what we've done. New Guinea, all this is kind of a stalemate, it feels like right now, and like, we can punch back in Burma, and maybe that's what we just need to do and hope for the best, but already the Japanese have kind of realigned themselves to have air coverage and reinforcements. So, like, the Allies don't have a lot of great options. There's just not much coming up for them. They're waiting for those reinforcements to come in. But in between, like, the war is going swimmingly for the Japanese. They've enjoyed some good battle die roll luck. Any of the ones where they've rolled poorly, it almost didn't matter. Like, we rolled crap down here with that smothering attack. Who cares? Right? We rolled a 0, I think, or we rolled something like we didn't do any hits. That's fine. The battles that mattered, we rolled okay, and that's all we needed to roll to really make a difference here. And the times that it maybe has mattered more, the Americans have rolled very poorly. Their die roll on defense really matters. They need to attrit the Japanese, and they're just not doing it. So this is going Japanese sided at this point, I think, in a very big way, but it remains to be seen just to what degree. And I have to figure out how aggressive now to be as the Allies, because I did that War in Europe card play, but that is really that would have been, had it gone a little bit differently, where, like, I don't know, the Japanese rolled badly up here and the Americans rolled good. Like, we could have pushed the Japanese carrier fleet back with a lot of losses, and, like, they'd have been in bad shape. But the reality was both sides rolled the one times result, right? Like, it was as good as it was going to get for the Allies there, and just on the numbers, they're screwed. So we'll see what can be done, guys. We'll play through a few more cards on each side, and see how the rest of 1940, or, well, I should say May, August, proceeds. I do want to point out I've put myself in a pickle here, so I've still not gone yet as the Allies. He's out of supply. So he got in here, but he is currently out of supply because we can't trace 12 hexes to him or 13 hexes to him, and he's going to attrit away unless I somehow do something about that. And at this point, I don't know what I can do. I can't activate him. And I'm looking at the map thinking, okay, I don't think there's anything I can do right now to stop that from happening. The most that I could try to do is, and this was what I was realizing, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna take that plane and stick it here. I actually can't do that. And I'm sure there's somebody who's in the comment section has already put a comment, and, well, guess what? I caught it. I did. Before you wrote your comment, I did. This is a problem. Now, I could take this HQ off the map with a card play, but if I want to send it, like, to Kwajalein and then count, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, or 13 to this hex, if we were trying to, like, cut Hawaii out of supply, I can only take the HQ off and let it come back as a reinforcement later. So if I'm going to do that and say card play, combined fleet off, and then place it as a reinforcement at the next turn, I know that I'm going to basically this guy's going to probably die, which sucks because that's a whole ground unit, right? Ground step that we don't get many of. If I got all the way up here with, like, a different Marine unit somehow, like this guy, he could suffer a step attrition, and then we would be putting air there later after we've already placed the HQ, but we got to do a bunch of rebasing. So, like, I'm all excited about this, and there is goodness to celebrate here as the Japanese. We took out the carrier fleet, but we're pushing ourselves way beyond our operational capability, and I've stranded many Japanese soldiers to death, basically. This will be empty. I don't know that the Americans are going to be able to jump right in there on the get-go on this next turn. We could certainly feed it, but that's attritional pain, which is a problem. So I've got to think around that and deal with that, but that's going to influence the remainder of the Japanese card plays and will likely influence some of the Allied card plays. Okay, so we played now a Allied card and then the Japanese card thereafter. Allies could have played the Operation Reno 2, the invasion of Rabaul, but, well, things look rough down here, guys. Don't jump to conclusions yet. We could have. It would have been a trap because of the reaction card, so we chose not to. We focused up here, and we launched a anti-Japan, a Burmese offensive to blunt the Japanese here, and we did actually, we launched an attack supported by all the air. Um, Japan reacted into the hex with some stuff, but ultimately it was kind of a push. The critical thing is we're attriting the Japanese air and the ground units here, and while certainly there's some attrition for the Commonwealth Indian units, like that was a good kind of push. It just blunts the Japanese ability to make progress. And it's very odd to be saying like Burma's the best theater for the Allies right now because on the subsequent Japanese play, we rolled a DE. I flipped the D card. We got this nice 3 card, which the event itself, we couldn't really make use of the paratrooper stuff. There just wasn't anything available from that. But we played it as an ops card, and we launched an offensive to remove all the or I should say the U.S. naval units, the remnant at Biak, and a naval battle at Guadalcanal. And, ultimately, we just ran roughshod there, and there's just not much to write about now. Like, we did a clean sweep. Now, granted, we have attrited now Shikaku, Akagi, and the Yamato. All have lost a step, but and then otherwise, the Nagato has been rebased at Rabaul. We don't have a lot of air cover at Rabaul now, but we've cleared out a lot. Wake still has some stuff here, but we can take our time if we want. We're going to lose that unit, but what I am going to try to do, I think, is spend the last couple of Japanese card plays moving the combined fleet HQ here. We can take it off the map, but if we bring it on as not a reinforcement, it gets placed in the home island, so we would like shift it. This is so we can grab an Alaska Hex next turn, which is probably what I should have done, otherwise, but I don't know. This might have been a dumb move. I don't know, but the fact that we'll control it, we're going to lose it, which means we're not actually going to get the political will progress, but we'll spend. I don't know. I need to move the South Seas HQ as well. So I need to think through what I want to do here. What I might do is actually move the South Seas HQ. Well, I don't know. So this is where I'm getting challenged here, guys. What I could do, as the last card plays, is pick up both these HQs, and I'm going to functionally swap them. So as they come in for reinforcements, I put the South Seas up here that can trace 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, with some to spare to Atu Kiska. And then we've just got general activation capability around. And then we would stick the combined fleet in Kwajalein. A little dangerous, could get cut out of supply maybe eventually. But then this would allow us to trace out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and put this hex, while it'll be empty by then, into supply, and then we can spend our first card moving another unit here, and then potentially invading Kauai, and that would enable us to we would have some options here, guys. I guess I'll put it that way. That would give us some options, and we could potentially keep banging on Honolulu until we've put it out of supply. And then, from Kwajalein, 13 hexes down this way is enough to basically keep us operating consistently. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. That's this whole region here. We'd be reasonably able to keep stuff in supply and in activation and threaten Australia. So main thing is I want my main strike fleets here to be able to pressure the U.S. reinforcements, whether they go into Hawaii, whether or not they go into Australia territory. Like, I need to make I basically need uh, I need these guys all under threat, and once we would stick Hawaii out of supply, we basically attrit the defenders away, and then we pivot, to another situation here. I'm not sure. This is going to be weird, guys. Like, I'm really trying to drive U.S. political will down, and this is going to be a way to do it. Now, getting into Burma would be great, but I don't mind putting the US in such a bad spot that like they can't make progress of war and we basically keep them off the map and that's how we win the game. So that's going to be the gameplay here I think maybe is be prepared to swap HQs and then next turn we continue to pressure Hawaii and we begin to get into Alaska so that we can continue to buy down US political will and go from there. We're gonna lose this unit. At this point, I'm willing to just take stuff out of China because I don't think our path to victory has anything to do with China. I think we're gonna make America feel bad about the war and peace out, I guess, is gonna be our attempted objective here. So yeah, let me play through these. What I'm gonna do, I'm gonna play through the last 5 cards because it's either gonna like things are gonna be really different or it's gonna be really fast and straightforward, and we'll wrap up the video after we do the end turn stuff. Okay, so I had a whole bunch of stuff recorded, and I realized I had to delete it and start over because I don't actually have to move this HQ to trace to this island for the Alaska job, so I don't have to spend card play messing around with that at all, actually. I don't want to move this HQ though, because if I take it off the map and I wait until the reinforcement phase to put it in Kwajalein, everything else down here is going to be out of supply. And I do not want that because they will attrit. So I took a different course, right? The Allies spent cards fighting back kind of the only place they could, and they've attrited more Japanese units right here specifically. And so, there's kind of this tug of war going, like Rangoon will not fall, and in fact, the Allies are going to maybe get us to a point where we're going to attrit the Japanese army away in Southeast Asia, and maybe we like get to the point where we're liberating Malaya and French Indochina and that kind of thing. Like that's all interesting. That could happen. I don't know. But the focus has been in the South Pacific basically here. So as we reach the end of the turn, we've reached the end of the turn specifically. That big army unit is gone. It attrited, but I did ship in one of my very valuable Marines because this is worth it to me. They've taken a bit of attrition. So long as this guy survives next turn, and I'm going to do everything I can to ensure that we keep Hawaii suppressed, he will make it to the National Will segment before he attrits away, and that will be a ding against National Will. We'll likewise be moving on Alaska. That's going to drain political will. We did drop 2 political will levels because, as you can see, there's no more U.S. naval units on the map. Like we have diligently destroyed everything that's out there. We've reduced these units from raids. We've taken Bayak proper. And so we're just going to keep driving down here, the Allies to a breaking point. Now they're going to take probably a lot of these reinforcements and bring them in here, but I'd much rather be fighting and messing around down here while we're picking up these other political will drops. And ultimately, so again, the US will get these reinforcements. They will get the turn 4 reinforcements without any delay because of the War in Europe card we played earlier. But, the Japanese just need to hold out for a couple more turns, and especially because next turn starts the progress of war. And right now, I think, yeah, the Allies are going to have a hard time figuring out, how to make headway here. Now, they're going to get a lot of air reinforcements, and we could plop them down all around Rabaul and put Rabaul out of supply, because technically the Allies control the rest of these bases all around Rabaul itself. We need, I believe, to take Guadalcanal to take ownership of all these things. So this constrains the places the Allies can go to get progress of war, but it is easier to pick on Rabaul, so that might be an opportunity. Oahu's going to be a challenge. It's really under a lot of threat. It's halfway to getting a political will loss for the encroachment. We could be beaten up on these guys over here, but Wake is kind of out of the way at this point. There's not a lot of heavy pressure. We're almost doing a reverse bypass on it. So political will down to 3. We're going to see Hawaii occupied at the end of next turn. I guess maybe I should like put this marker here to remind us. A couple other things. That whole thing where I took an air unit off the map, that was just a mistake. But it'll be nice. I'll stick them down here just to, you know, take advantage of that situation. I am going to have to pull more ground units out of China, and I'm definitely going to do that. We need to replenish our ground units. We need to figure out where else we're going to go on our offensives. Knowing that we're sacrificing steps to maybe achieve victory, but if that fails, if somehow the U.S. hangs on, then we could end up with a very brittle Japan that can't survive the rest of the game very long. So we'll see what happens. If Japan gets some nice political will events or something that knocks the U.S. down, like the next couple of turns might be the end of the game. And if something like that happens, we'll just pick up again in the 1943 campaign start and keep playing, I think. So, yeah, Australia is in danger. Well, New Guinea is in danger generally at this point. Um, Guadalcanal is pretty empty. You know, Australia itself is pretty empty. The reinforcements are going to be key. There's going to be a lot of replacement points coming in. The Allies are going to be using everything they can to have table presence. And again, maybe they achieve a breakthrough over outside of Burma, but we're just sitting on sitting on a lot of challenge. And the whole time, this card sits in our arsenal as Japan that we could leverage. Lots to consider there, guys. So we'll pick it up in the next one where we'll get the reinforcements out. I'll take care of all of that quickly off camera, and then we'll get to playing and we'll see where we end up. I think Japan feels really good, but it's tense. They either achieve total victory over the next couple of turns, or they fall apart. Even our main carrier fleet is looking pretty ragged. It's going to be hard to get those guys back in good shape if they do at all. So we'll go from there, guys. See you in the next one. Take care. Keep gaming.